My name is Dale Carr. I'm with the Blackford County Health Department. I'm an environmental specialist and also I do food inspections along with that.
And I am Joe Rakoczy with the Indiana Department of Health. I work in the Environmental Public Health Division. My primary function is to provide technical assistance and training to local health departments in the residential on-site sewage system program. So I primarily deal with septic systems every day of my life. So with that, let's go ahead and start the presentation here. So do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Okay. All right. Good. So again, on behalf of Flatland Resources, I'd like to welcome you to our presentation today on septic systems. We introduced ourselves just a few moments ago. Dale Carr is with me from Blackford County Health Department, and I'm Joe Rakoczy with the Indiana Department of Health. IDOH's mission is to promote, protect, and improve the health of all Hoosiers in the state of Indiana. Not only in this time of pandemic when we talk about vaccines and testing, but also in our day-to-day lives when we look at things like septic systems. So we want to improve that health of everyone who lives in our state. So what does every homeowner need to know about an on-site sewage system or a septic system? Well, we started out several years ago with just sanitary vault privies, outhouses, if you want to call them that. And in several counties throughout the state, we still have outhouses that are in use. A lot of our old order Amish populations throughout northeast Indiana still use sanitary vault privies as their primary means of sewage disposal in the state. Many times people will ask when certain laws came into effect in the state, when did we start enforcing sanitary sewage? And regulatory history really dates back to 1899. It was a federal act. It was the Refuse Act, and basically it prohibited the dumping of any refuse into any navigable waters. So as far back as 1899, we've had some sort of regulation in the country. 1949 is when Indiana wrote into state law basically the sanitary engineering, or set up for sanitary engineering. It gave us powers and abatement to stop public health issues and the authority for inspection. Bulletin SE 8 is our original sanitary engineering, dealt with septic tanks and sewage disposals. That came out and revised between 51 and 74. 1977 was when our first rule was created, Rule 410-6-8. And as you can see, we've had several revisions to that over the years. In 2012, Rule 410, 2012, Rule 410-6-10 was adopted, and that's our commercial rule. So anything not residential, but business, for profit, deals in the commercial side. So these are our governing rules of how we construct, inspect, permit these types of systems in the state of Indiana. So in Indiana, who has an on-site sewage system, or an OSS as we call it in the industry? It's any dwelling that's not connected to a sanitary sewerage system shall be provided with a septic tank and a soil absorption system that has not failed. So it's about 25% of the US population based upon recent census data, and about 34% of Indiana residents have a septic system or an on-site sewage system. We would be remiss in not talking about the water cycle, the water recycle process here in this world of ours. When we look at the big picture, we have precipitation, which leads to surface runoff, gathers in our lakes and our oceans, back into evaporation and condensation. And it's that constant cycle of movement of water. And we have that same experience in our backyards. So our well will pull from the subsurface groundwater table pulls it up into our home. We use it for the various activities in our home, in our sinks, in our toilet. We flush it, goes out into our septic tank, out into our soil absorption field, and then through the soil gets purified and then returns to our water table. So it's the small picture of recycle in our backyard. So we're in a position in this world where we don't produce new water. The water that we use is in constant state of recycle. So we have to remember that and protect our most valuable resource. Indiana is a soil-based treatment state, and that means that we use the soil, our natural soil, to purify impurities and pathogens out of our wastewater before they go back into the natural water table. And in Indiana, you're required to have a soil evaluation performed by an Indiana registered soil scientist. Those are a professional designation for any new or replacement septic system in the state. We gather that information, local health departments gather that information, and we use that information for system selection, sizing, what type of system you'll have, and we'll go through some of the various types here in just a few moments. Sewage is treated a variety of different ways in the state. You probably may, if you live in an incorporated area, city or town, maybe even a small subdivision, you may have what's called a municipal sewer system, a sanitary sewer. It's a centralized system, so everybody's connected to it. You flush the toilet, sewage passes on, goes to a treatment plant, and then treat it, and then moves back into the water system. We also have what's called a cluster system or a decentralized system. This could be a subdivision, a rural subdivision, it's not close enough to be connected to a sanitary sewer, but these houses would share a soil absorption field. They may have their own septic tank, but they share one or many soil absorption fields. And so it's a way of bringing that treatment to a smaller group. And then finally, we have the most common, the decentralized system. It's your own personal septic system in your backyard. I just want to make a clarification, and I don't want to call Paige out here for anything, but the photo on the flyer, I have to make a comment about the photo on the flyer. That is a filter bed that's shown, and those are not allowed in the state of Indiana. We did have them for several years throughout the state, but this one it would appear to be more of like a common single pass sand filter, and we don't allow those currently in the rural because they don't treat the effluent before it reaches back into the water table. Water enters into those pipes, passes through sand, hits some underlying pipes underneath that sand, and then discharges to a ditch. And we currently don't allow those in the rural. So I just wanted to point that out, not to be confused by that picture, because that picture won't show up in any of my examples of systems here in the state.
No, thanks for pointing that out.
It's not a problem. Some basic components of a septic tank. In Indiana, we allow either concrete or a poly plastic tank. Both have their application uses. Some sites that are difficult to get into with a concrete truck may use a plastic tank. So they're both approved by the state Department of Health. And then our soil absorption fields, we have a variety of technologies available. We can gravity feed it, we can flood dose or pump it. In a flood dose system, there's a pump involved. We have alternating fields, subsurface pressure distribution, which is also called a subsurface drip irrigation, and then elevated sand mound. So let's talk just a few moments about septic tanks. So they get all the wastewater carried from the house, and they provide the primary treatment of waste. So inside your septic tank, there's a retention time built. Typically, we size septic tanks per our rule based upon the number of bedrooms in the house. So we want a certain amount of treatment time inside that tank before it passes on through. So have your sludge will settle out, your fats, oils, and greases will float to the top and form a scum layer, and everything else in the middle is what moves on to your soil absorption field. We want these tanks to be watertight because we certainly don't want any extra water getting into your system. And we don't want water leaking out of the tank. Now above, you'll see in the graphic access lids. So we require, in our rule, require certain access lids over certain components of the tank. One will be over an outlet filter. One is an access for pumping. And if there was a center wall here, if this was a 2-compartment tank, we would require an access riser over that center wall. All those access risers must have a child-proof plug per state law. There was a law that was enacted several years ago. It's designed to keep children from inadvertently entering that septic tank. Risers are all to grade now, so they're all finished grade. So if you've purchased a home recently, you see those big green lids or black lids in the backyards. Those are all septic tank riser lids. So we want to make sure children stay out of those. So there's a secondary plug on the inside of those tanks for safety reasons. So distribution box is another component. So after the effluent or the sewage moves out of the septic tank, it flows by gravity to the distribution box. And the distribution box just divides flow evenly into your subsurface trenches, if you have trenches. They can be concrete or poly again. They're corrosive resistant, and they have a specific purpose in mind. These don't have to have a riser to grade. Some counties require it by their local ordinance, but we don't require that in our rule currently. Soil absorption field technologies, there's a variety of them approved in our rule. The most common we see is gravity flow. That's where it comes out of a house into a septic tank and then into some sort of soil absorption field, treatment field. We have gravity alternating fields. We don't see those too often anymore, but we still have that opportunity. Those are 2 equally sized soil absorption fields. So if you have available land and available acreage, that is an option you can put in. It's designed that one field will get all of the effluent for a period of time, and then you can divert flow to the other field and let it rest. So we see these sometimes in weaker soil conditions areas where we want the soils to kind of rejuvenate over time, and just give them a little bit of a rest. So we'll see these. Flood dose, as I explained, has a septic tank and then typically a pump tank or a dose tank. And then it'll flow that, and then from there it pumps out one whole, what we call a design daily flow. So in Indiana, we base a per bedroom flow as 150 gallons per day per bedroom. So if you have a 3-bedroom home, we're going to pump out 450 gallons in one daily dose. Let that work through the field, let it rest before the next 450 gallons is gathered and then pumped out. Subsurface drip, I explained these are typically, sometimes these are referred to as the Cadillac systems of the industry, because these are very technical. These emit just droplets of effluent into the soil. Very fragile soils, very porous soils. Sometimes we use pressure drip on, so we just have to be, and these take a little bit more skill in putting them in. Sorry. And then finally, we have an elevated sand mound. So if your soil conditions do not allow for a subsurface construction, then an elevated sand mound is built up upon the original grade of the soil, and has a distribution network, and NDOT Spec 23 sand is what's used in those. So subsurface options, we have what's up there in the right-hand corner is the old stone and pipe. And these are very much used today. I see a lot of stone and pipe systems go in. It's a 4-inch pipe embedded in a bed of gravel with topsoil cover at the top. The picture at the bottom of that shows a poly chamber. Works the same as stone and pipe, doesn't require any aggregate, but allows for air to move along the interior of that subsurface trench. It helps supply oxygen to the microbes living in that treat our soil and our effluent. Here's another cross sectional of an elevated system. So if sometimes you'll see a mound in someone's backyard. This is typically an elevated sand mound, and so that's just a typical example of an elevated system there. We also in the state of Indiana have what's called sand line systems that are approved. We currently have 3 manufacturers that have approved technologies for use in the state. Any technology that a manufacturer wants to use has to come to the Department of Health first for review. We take a look at the data behind that and determine whether that is a good fit for the state. Some technologies do not get approved for use in the state, some do. These are 3 particular products we have. That's a Presby AES, or Advanced Enviroseptic, Infiltrator ATL, which is an advanced treatment leach field, and an Elgin GSF is a geotextile sand filter. The picture shows the Presby AES in an application. Sand line systems offer a benefit of being either constructed in a subsurface bed configuration, on a level or a sloping surface, or in an elevated bed configuration. So what we're trying to prevent is a discharging system, or what we also consider as a non-system in the state of Indiana. So this is where your house is connected maybe to a septic tank, maybe, in some cases we found 50-gallon drums. So your sewage comes into what you consider a septic tank, and then it goes to a straight pipe or a discharge pipe to a creek, a farm tile, or things like that. So there's no treatment whatsoever. And it could be one house or it could be multiple houses along these. So we'll run into a common tile scenario. We'll go out and typically we'll end up going in response to a complaint, and we'll have 4 or 5 houses connected to a common tile, which ends up ultimately leading to basically everyone getting a brand new system to have to put in. But the picture shows a dye test results. So a dye test was done at a residence, and we ended up finding tracing dye in the culvert along the side road of the ditch. So that's a direct discharging system, and those are not allowed in the state of Indiana. Our response, a failed on-site system is a public health hazard in the state of Indiana. Indiana code, the reference number is there. It says a person shall not institute, permit, or maintain any conditions that may transmit, generate, promote disease. And then our rule 410 6-8.3, our current rule, 52A is the basis for most of our actions in regards to these type of things. I will say, I didn't make a note on the screen, but I want to make this perfectly clear. There is no grandfather clause in the state of Indiana in regards to discharging sewage to a stream or creek. So there is, if we find these, if it's an old system, it's done like that, there is no grandfather clause protection for these type of systems. These are a public health threat and a public health hazard, and we fix these when we find these. So I just want, a lot of times people say, well, that system's grandfathered in. No grandfather clause exists for a public health hazard. So our rule defines failure of a system as one of the following. It could be all 3, it could just be one of them. So interference with home plumbing or a backup into the home. Ponding, seepage, discharge to the ground, surface or surface waters, or a discharge that causes contamination of potable or ground or surface waters. Here's some examples. So as awful as this looks, you get sewage back into a tub or into a basement. We've encountered these many times. We've seen these quite frequently. That could be, there may be issues with your system, but more likely that's an indication of failure. Doesn't mean that you have to have a new system. Just means that we need to troubleshoot that, and a result could be a new system. Ponding, the picture in the upper right-hand corner, ponding seepage to the ground surface. I can tell you every dog, cat, and young child will find that puddle and want to play in it. It'll be brackish, heavily soiled, stink, smell. You'll know if you have issues with sewage or if your neighbor is having an issue with sewage. And then this bottom photo, I wanted to share this with you. This was a dye test that was conducted on a system, and the dye actually made its way back in through the well and came out of the faucet with the water. So not much treatment going on there at all, very little treatment. So why do systems fail? Well, occasionally we do run into poor installation and construction. Our rules of our main construction rules have been around since about the 90s. So sometimes before that they weren't always put in how we would like to see them done. We do from time to time run into I hate to use the word bad installer, maybe not the most skilled installer. Maybe it's somebody that's doing a fly-by-night, trying to avoid a permit, and they're trying to help a buddy out, and they put in, oh, I can run a backhoe. It can't be that difficult. Well, then we run into these situations. The soils may cause the system to fail. If you have an old system that's gone in and we didn't evaluate the soils properly ahead of time, we may have put the wrong type of system into the ground, and maybe it shouldn't have been above ground. And then ground and surface water can cause systems to fail. So if you've got surface drainage that is ponding in the area of your soil absorption field, you're going to hydraulically overload the field, and it will not accept water. So they fail mainly because of lack of maintenance. Okay, these are not a one and done type things. You don't put them in and just completely forget about them. We have to maintain them properly. Hydraulic overload, if there's too much water in use in the residence. Leaking faucets are notoriously bad for septic systems. They can add a lot of water into a system that's not designed for it. Trash can use, in other words, everything goes down a drain. Paint, whatever. We don't want these things to become trash cans. Fats, oils, and grease, a buildup of fats, oils, and grease. Poor land use, chemicals, medications. Often when we're investigating failures or helping the homeowner troubleshoot a failure, one of the first questions is there anybody in the home that's on any kind of chemotherapy drugs? Because certain medications impact the conditions inside the septic tank and don't allow for some of that breakdown and some of that treatment to occur in the tank. So that's an indication sometimes there. And then homeowner abuse again. So some of the don'ts that and usually leading in the list is garbage disposal. Everybody wants a garbage disposal, but if you're in a rural setting, create a compost pile. Don't put items into a disposal and then down the drain. That will turn into that heavy sludge that is in the bottom of the tank, and it just builds up over a period of time. It can plug your outlet filter and things like that. No chemicals, no additives, no diapers, no flushable wipes. I don't care how clearly the package is marked as safe for flushing. Even if you're on a sanitary sewer system, do not use flushable wipes or don't send them down the drain. Thousands of dollars are spent on removing these flushable wipes from screening filters at wastewater treatment plants and things like that. They do not break down and will cost you more money in the end run. Kitty litter, oil, grease, paint, coffee grounds. Don't plant trees or shrubs too close to your system. Sometimes if it's an elevated mound, some people like to put up a line of shrubbery to kind of hide it so people don't see it. But roots could actually get into that sand and cause some discharging that we're not ready. Don't drive over your solid absorption field. Sometimes it's the best available parking for a family reunion, but keep cars off of it. Know where that soil absorption field is and keep it off there. RV waste, I'm a camper myself, but RV waste, a lot of the chemicals that go into a treatment tank contain formaldehyde. That will kill bacteria in your septic tank. So we generally say no RV waste down into your septic tank. And then discharge groundwater to the soil absorption field. So no sump pumps, no foundation drains, no gutters, no floor drains. Those are spelled out in our rule, prohibited, but just try to avoid any additional water that's going into your system. So divert surface water. If you have a new system installed, if there's a possible surface water, your installer should create some sort of surface diversion around that. We want to spread out water usage. So if you're a large family, don't do all of your laundry on Saturday. Spread it out over a couple of days. Give your system a little bit of time to work and to recover, but spread out that water usage over a period of time. Get some good vegetative cover established, some grass over your system. Have the system inspected routinely. We say every 3 to 5 years, have that tank pumped on a regular basis. Keeps that tank healthy. Don't have to do anything other than pumping and cleaning it. Install an outlet filter, and then consider installing high efficiency, low flow appliances, fixtures, and toilets. System maintenance, again, tank cleaning, septic, and the dosing tank, clean those out, have them pumped out. This is a picture of an effluent filter being cleaned. These are now required in new tanks, but if you have an old tank, you might want to consider adding an outlet filter, an effluent filter in your tank. It just removes some last little impurities before it gets out into your field. Have your effluent pump checked. Make sure it's still pumping at the rate it's supposed to and at the volume it's supposed to. If you can have your distribution box checked, have that checked. Keep an eye on your electric panel and your soil absorption field. So why do we recommend maintenance? Well, as you can see in the photo of the tank, that sludge builds up over time and that scum layer gets thicker over time. So we want as much clear effluent space as possible for treatment. So just a good routine cleaning keeps that tank healthy. It reduces that buildup of fats, oils, and grease, increases the longevity of your system, gives you an opportunity to clean your outlet filter, and then check those mechanical appointments again. How do I find my on-site system? Well, first and foremost, contact your local health department. See if they have a permit on file for the system. And if you're viewing this in the Blackford, Delaware, or Grant County areas, those are the contacts information there as to who you can contact by email. You can also call a registered or certified installer in your county. They have the means of coming out and looking for probing for various components. You can also call an IOPA certified inspector, and IOPA is Indiana On-Site Wastewater Professional Association, and their web address is below. So why should we care about all this? I mean, why do we even have a rule in the state of Indiana regarding septic systems? Well, we want to provide that safe environment. We want to provide safe, clean drinking water and provide healthy natural resources. We're a very resource-rich state. We're blessed with several state parks throughout the state, several rivers, tributaries, many activities go on in those, and we just want to protect this for future generations. We also want to protect our investment. So just like you've invested in a house, invested in a brand new car, we want to make sure we make that investment in our septic system. So in speaking with Dale, I had said, well, we kind of refer it back to sometimes with purchasing a brand new vehicle. So I just wrote a check for a brand new truck, and I've spent $45,000-$50,000 on that truck. I drive it off the lot, and I never do a thing to it again. I don't change the oil. I don't sweep it out. I don't clean the windows. I do nothing but maybe put gas in it and just drive. I don't worry about the condition of the tires, the brakes. I don't worry about those. That investment's not going to last very long. It's the same concept with a septic system. If I'm going to spend, and these are sometimes expensive systems that have to go in, but if you're going to put out that kind of money on a septic system, why would you just never look at it again? We want to make sure that you are routine maintenance. Just have your installer back out, take a look at it. It's been 5 years since it's gone in. Let's take a look at it, make sure it's still there. It's much easier to do the maintenance than it is to do a total replacement of it. Okay. So finally, in closing, we wanted to share some pictures of just some of the situations that we run into. Often these kinds of failures are reported via complaint. So we get a neighbor complaint or maybe a municipal setting complaint to where we're noticing an odor or a discharge. Can you come out? And we'll do some water testing, and then if it's in this area of like a subdivision, we may ask for a voluntary compliance and dye testing and see if we can find out what's going on. But sometimes these are self-reported. Sometimes a homeowner will contact the health department and say, I think I've got an issue out here. Can you come out and take a look? We'll always certainly come out and take a look for you. You may not like the answers you get from us, but that's what the service we provide. So we're there for you. We're not there to work against you. We're there for you. So we run into ponding and surface waters. There's one picture there that shows water that's coming from an adjoining property. You want to be a good, respectful neighbor. You don't want to discharge your sewage onto somebody else's property. I run into that quite frequently, and it's unfortunate. You may not have the means to fix it right away, but most health departments will be willing to work with you on trying to get that done. So at this point, I think this concludes our presentation. I talked a little faster today than normal, but I would encourage you, if you're a homeowner and you're looking at a possibility of a new construction, it's bare land. Depending on where you're at, see if you can have your soil evaluation done before you purchase the property. One that gives you an idea of, yes, I can construct a septic system on this land, or what type of system I get to put on this land. Sometimes over in the Adams County, portions of Wells County, we run into soil conditions that do not allow for construction of a septic system, just because we have some very heavy, expansive clay in our soil. And so not always septic friendly. So do your homework beforehand. So if you're building new, start that process ahead of time. Hopefully anybody selling property won't be too restrictive to that. Maybe they'll ask why, or maybe they've already had a soil evaluation done. If you're looking at repair and replacement, first phone call really should be to the health department. Find out what that process is, start that paperwork process. Your local health department is there to be your resource and to provide assistance throughout the process. We'll be there for permitting, and we will review the plans that your installer submits. We'll approve those, say yes, no, make some revisions, and then finally we'll come out and inspect the construction and make sure that it went in appropriately. So we're there as a protection for you. It's a consumer protection. With that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Paige, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for that presentation. So my background is in urban planning, and now I'm actually getting to learn some of the, I guess, technical aspects of septic systems. I knew about it from zoning, but I had no idea that they couldn't be grandfathered in because
Yeah, there's
almost everything
no
else is.
grandfather clause at all for
Yeah,
for,
but it
for
makes total
discharge.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I guess I should also mention too is that many counties are enacting pre-sale inspection requirements. Blackford
We do.
County, I think, has one.
Okay.
There's been in recent years, there's been a couple of House bills introduced at the state legislature regarding it. They haven't progressed anywhere, but I think that's out there in our foreseeable future is that you'll see some requirement from some sort of inspection prior to the sale of a property.
Okay.
Because often we run into somebody who's bought a home and then find out that the system was in failure or they have no system, and then now they're spending thousands of dollars to make the situation.
Yeah, I remember people trying to get variances for that too, and
Yeah.
we just say this is one thing you can't get a variance from. You can try, but
I'm not against country living. Just do your homework ahead of time. That's key. And unfortunately, some people just don't do their homework ahead of time, and oops, lost you. There you go. But we're there as a resource. You can, your first stop is always the local health department. There's always an environmentalist on staff. Sometimes they wear multiple hats. Dale does food inspections as well. Some just do on-site sewage. So it just depends. So, but I thank you for the opportunity.
Hey,
Yeah.
I have one thing that Joe and I talked about yesterday that I would like to kind of emphasize.
Yeah.
And Joe was talking about a homeowner and people who are going to do the installation of their septic system. The reason we strongly encourage to get someone who is certified, someone who does this, if a homeowner can meet all those requirements, taking the test and doing all that, we still have to be there on an unlimited basis, because if they would mess up in any way, shape, or form, then they would have to locate a new site on their property. They may not have enough room for that. So at that point, having someone who installs these all the time, sometimes your cost outweighs what could happen. So at that point, really, like Joe was saying, really do your homework, because, oh, I can save money here, I can save money there. But if you mess it up, you've got to start from scratch again. And that could be twice as costly.